1943. You're standing guard at a railway junction, rifle slung over your shoulder, cigarette glowing in the darkness. Behind you, footsteps approach. Before your brain can process the sound, before your hand can reach your weapon, before your lungs can draw breath to shout, you're already dead. The man who killed you is wearing what appears to be a plumber's tool strapped to his forearm. That plumber's tool just ended your life in absolute silence. What you never saw was one of history's most unusual assassination instruments, a device so specialized, so precisely engineered, that fewer than 30 ever existed, a weapon that bundled 3 distinct killing methods into a single package no larger than a flashlight. This is the story of an object that embodies everything desperate and innovative about Britain's shadow war against Hitler, a weapon designed not for battlefields, but for moments when stealth mattered more than firepower and silence was the difference between mission success and a shallow grave. Summer of 1940 brought a grim reality to the British Isles. France had crumbled in weeks. The swastika flew over Paris. Hitler's forces occupied territory stretching from the Norwegian fjords to the Pyrenees. Every night German bombers droned overhead, raining destruction on London. Invasion seemed inevitable. Churchill's government faced an existential crisis with conventional military options rapidly dwindling. Out of this desperation emerged an organization, unlike anything in British military history, created with Churchill's famous directive to set Europe ablaze. The Special Operations Executive represented a radical departure from traditional warfare. These weren't soldiers in the conventional sense. They were saboteurs, assassins, and guerrilla coordinators trained to wage war from the shadows. Their mission required them to parachute into hostile territory, link up with resistance fighters, destroy infrastructure, and when absolutely necessary, eliminate human obstacles. The mathematics of occupied Europe created a specific tactical problem. Germany stationed hundreds of thousands of troops across conquered territories. Every ammunition depot, every radar installation, every communications hub sat behind layers of security. Sentries patrolled bridges that needed demolition. Guards protected railway yards marked for sabotage. These men had to die without alerting their comrades. A single gunshot could summon reinforcements. A prolonged struggle might give a dying soldier time to fire his weapon or cry out. Silent elimination became an operational imperative. Agents needed methods that guaranteed instantaneous incapacitation with zero acoustic signature. The killing had to happen in seconds, preferably from behind, leaving no opportunity for resistance or alarm. Miss that narrow window, and the entire operation collapsed. Worse, capture behind enemy lines meant interrogation by the Gestapo, torture, and eventual execution. Britain's clandestine warriors already possessed several options for quiet killing, but each carried significant drawbacks that limited tactical flexibility. The stiletto knife represented the most straightforward approach. That legendary double-edged blade designed by Fairbairn and Sykes could pierce vital organs with surgical precision. Instructors taught agents exactly where to strike: the kidney from behind, the heart between the ribs, the throat slashed ear to ear. A knife killed silently and certainly, but demanded that the operative close to contact distance. If the target sensed danger and turned, the agent faced a trained soldier at arm's length with only a blade against a rifle and bayonet. Strangulation cords offered another path. Wire or rope looped around a throat and pulled tight could render a man unconscious within seconds and dead shortly after. The victim couldn't shout with his windpipe crushed, but garroting only worked from the rear. It required precise positioning and timing. If your approach alerted the sentry, if he spun around at the wrong moment, your strangling wire became useless string against a man preparing to drive a bayonet through your chest. Weighted clubs solved different problems. A heavy object swung against the skull dropped targets instantly. British constables had used similar instruments for decades, but a stunned enemy might recover. A blow that landed imperfectly could leave the victim conscious enough to raise an alarm. Even successful strikes produced bodies that twitched and groaned, potentially attracting attention from passing patrols. Field operatives typically carried all 3 implements: a fighting knife on the belt, a cord tucked into a pocket, a weighted Cosh up the sleeve. This created a different complication in the adrenaline-soaked confusion of a night operation. Fumbling between weapons cost precious seconds. Those seconds could mean the difference between clean elimination and a firefight that doomed the entire mission. Into this tactical problem stepped two men whose backgrounds could hardly have been more different. John Pescott ran one of England's most prestigious firearms manufacturers. Cogswell and Harrison had crafted precision weapons since 1770, building shotguns for aristocrats and fulfilling military contracts spanning generations. Their Piccadilly workshop employed master craftsmen, capable of manufacturing tolerances that few wartime facilities could match. When British intelligence required something built to exacting specifications with absolute discretion, Pescott's organization could deliver. His partner brought an altogether different skill set. Sidney McLaglen had built a career around personal combat, though the precise nature of that career remained perpetually murky. He claimed the title of World Jiu-Jitsu Champion. Following a 1907 London match, he published training manuals covering armed and unarmed fighting techniques. He insisted he'd served in the Boer War and developed a proprietary bayonet system adopted by military organizations. The problem was that much of McLaglen's biography appeared to be creative fiction. His own brother, the Academy Award-winning actor Victor McLaglen, publicly denounced him as a fraud. Researchers who examined his claims found embellishments, exaggerations, and outright fabrications layered throughout his personal mythology. Yet somehow, British intelligence saw utility in his idea. By 1944, this self-promoting combat theorist held a naval commission and found his name attached to classified weapons development. Together, the respectable manufacturer and the questionable martial artist conceived something unprecedented. Rather than three separate tools requiring fumbled selection in darkness, they envisioned a unified device, a single instrument that could crush skulls, strangle throats, and pierce vital organs depending on the situation. Something an operative could wear invisibly beneath a jacket sleeve, ready for instant placement regardless of circumstances. Their collaboration produced a weapon that looked deceptively mundane. Casual observers might mistake it for electrical equipment or plumbing hardware. A dark metal cylinder roughly 7 inches long with a spherical weight at one end, secured to the forearm by a heavy canvas strap. Nothing about its external appearance suggested its true purpose. The business end featured a solid ball forged from lead and steel, approximately the size of a large walnut. This weighted sphere served dual functions. Swung downward against a human skull, it delivered concentrated impact capable of fracturing bone and destroying consciousness. The physics were elementary. Mass concentrated at the end of a lever arm multiplied striking force. A compact swing produced devastating results. That same metal ball concealed the strangulation component. Inside the cylinder, wrapped around an internal spool, coiled roughly 2 feet of high tensile piano wire. This specific material selection mattered. Piano wire possessed minimal stretch under load. It bit into flesh rather than elongating. One end remained permanently anchored within the body. The other emerged through a small aperture, fitted with a finger ring for the operative's grip. Deployment involved loosening a set screw, drawing the wire to full extension, looping it around the target's throat from behind, crossing wrists and applying pressure. The wire's length allowed the killing leverage while the weighted ball could be rotated afterward to revolt the filament for storage. Elegant engineering that converted a bludgeon into a strangling apparatus. The third killing method occupied the opposite end. A slender stiletto blade, 5.5 inches of spike-shaped steel, nested inside the hollow cylinder body. Activation required nothing more than depressing a spring-loaded catch and flicking the wrist downward. Gravity pulled the blade free, where it locked into extended position with a mechanical click. This gravity deployment solved a critical operational problem. Agents working in darkness, with wet hands, with bloody fingers, under combat stress, could reliably produce the blade through simple wrist motion. No complex mechanisms to fumble. No catches to manipulate precisely, just point down and shake. Early development exposed significant engineering challenges. A prototype version, which surfaced decades later at auction, revealed the iterative refinement required before the design became viable. Initial attempts produced a weighted ball, insufficiently massive for reliable incapacitation. Effective bludgeoning demanded adequate mass, moving at sufficient velocity. Reduce the weight, and you need a longer swing to achieve equivalent impact. Longer swings gave targets more reaction time. The production version addressed this with a substantially heavier sphere, The first blade iteration measured barely 3 inches. Combat knives achieve lethality partly through reach. That legendary fighting stiletto stretched 7.5 inches precisely because that length could reach vital organs from multiple angles. 3 inches might wound without killing quickly. The final design extended blade length to combat-effective proportions. Most critically, early wire spools proved dangerously unreliable. The storage diameter wound the piano wire too tightly, creating stress points that weakened the filament. A garrote that snapped during deployment would doom the operative using it. Imagine committing to a strangulation attack, applying pressure, and having your wire fail at the crucial moment. You've just alerted your target, positioned yourself for a counterattack, and lost your primary weapon. The production version incorporated a larger diameter spool that eliminated these stress failures. Patent documents filed in August 1942 and published in March 1944 describe the final configuration in clinical language: improvements in or relating to close combat weapons, consisting of 2 or more close combat weapons, such as a dagger and a strangulation cord with a club or cosh. Bureaucratic terminology masking an instrument designed exclusively for silent assassination. Production numbers tell a story of extreme limitation. Specialist dealers and auction records consistently describe the completed weapons as extraordinarily scarce. Estimates suggest total manufacturing barely exceeded 24 units. Some surviving examples carry stamped serial numbers and patent markings. One reportedly displayed insignia that collectors have interpreted as denoting elite commando formations. This minuscule quantity meant distribution remained severely restricted. Even if every manufactured example reached active operatives, fewer than 25 agents across all British and American clandestine services could carry one. Organizations employing thousands of personnel across multiple theaters received a handful of specialized assassination tools. Intended recipients included Surrey agents and their American counterparts in the OSS following Pearl Harbor. Some collectors connect surviving examples to the famous combined American-Canadian unit that earned fearsome reputation in Italy and southern France. Each weapon arrived with its wrist strap and a specialized belt scabbard, allowing concealed carry beneath civilian clothing. Here the narrative takes an unexpected direction. Despite its ingenious design and obvious purpose, no verified documentation confirms this weapon ever took a human life. Researchers have combed accessible mission reports, veteran accounts, and operational files. The 3-in-1 assassination tool appears in museum displays and collector catalogs, but remains absent from combat records. This could reflect archival gaps or informal field use that went undocumented. Clandestine operations by nature resist comprehensive record keeping, but based on available evidence, this carefully engineered killing instrument apparently remained unused in its intended role. One specialist who examined the weapon's history delivered a blunt verdict. Despite being purchased by operatives and designed specifically for their needs, these devices appear more souvenir than service weapon. No confirmed kills, no documented deployments, expensive precision manufacturing that produced an apparent curiosity rather than an operational success. Several factors explain this puzzling outcome. Timing worked against adoption. By the time patents published in 1944, clandestine services had already established trusted equipment suites. Operatives relied on proven fighting knives manufactured in millions. They used dedicated strangling cords with proper handles. They carried suppressed pistols that had demonstrated effectiveness across multiple theaters. Introducing an unfamiliar combination weapon midway through the conflict offered uncertain advantages against tools that already worked. The inherent compromises of combination design diluted effectiveness. Bundling 3 functions meant each component performed worse than purpose-built alternatives. The weighted ball was smaller than a proper cosh. The blade was thinner than a dedicated stiletto. The wire wound on a cramped internal spool lacked the leverage handles of a specialized garrote. Jack of 3 trades, master of none. Operational security considerations may have influenced decisions. A conventional fighting knife could plausibly appear among standard military equipment. This unique cylinder with its deployable blade, hidden wire and weighted ball was obviously an assassination instrument. Discovery by enemy security forces would mark its owner as something far more dangerous than an ordinary prisoner of war. The Gestapo would recognize exactly what they'd captured and respond accordingly. Comparing this British innovation against contemporary weapons reveals both its ambition and its limitations. German forces never developed equivalent combination instruments. Their gravity knives served paratroopers as utility tools rather than assassination devices. Ceremonial daggers carried by political organizations emphasized symbolism over tactical function. In covert killing capability, British engineering operated without peer. American approaches took different directions. Elite units received superb fighting knives optimized for close combat, but offering only blade function. One bizarre American creation fired a single pistol round when the wearer punched a target, representing ingenious concealment, but even more impractical deployment, with production numbers possibly smaller than the British combination weapon. Against its British contemporaries, the 3-in-1 concept suffered by comparison. That legendary commando knife achieved iconic status that endures today. Still carried ceremonially by Royal Marines. Suppressed pistols developed in British workshops delivered genuinely silent killing at ranges measured in meters, with documented operational successes from Scandinavia to Southeast Asia. These simpler, dedicated tools proved their worth through combat use, while the combination weapon remained theoretical. When Britain disbanded its wartime clandestine apparatus in early 1946, exotic equipment scattered. With its tiny production run, the combination assassination tool largely disappeared from view. Surviving examples now command remarkable collector interest. Recent auction results illustrate current valuations. A prototype sold for several $100s in late 2022. Marked production versions list from specialist dealers at several $1,000s, with perhaps 24 ever manufactured and an unknown fraction surviving. Authentic examples rank among the scarcest artifacts from the entire conflict. Sidney McLaglen died in obscurity in 1951, his wartime contributions forgotten. While his famous brother continued making films, John Pescott maintained his connection to Britain's prestigious firearms manufacturer for decades. The venerable company still operates today, though assassination devices no longer appear in their catalogue. Museum collections preserve several examples for public viewing. Permanent exhibitions on clandestine operations display the weapon alongside other specialized equipment from Britain's Shadow War. Specialist publications continue documenting its history for researchers and collectors who appreciate its unique position in covert warfare development. No post-war military or intelligence organization adopted the design. Cold War services preferred proven suppressed firearms and conventional edged weapons. The combination concept influenced no known subsequent development. It remains a singular experiment, a path explored and abandoned, a road not taken in assassination technology evolution. 7 inches of dark metal, 3 killing methods, unified in one package, perhaps 24 manufactured, none confirmed to have taken a life. This weapon represents something profound about Britain's existential struggle. When conventional military options narrowed toward extinction, British engineers explored every conceivable solution. Some innovations proved devastatingly effective and shaped clandestine operations for decades. Others achieved specific mission objectives through brilliant improvisation, and some, like this combination assassination tool, remained elegant theories that never quite translated to operational reality. That willingness to try everything, to combine previously separate functions, to innovate under existential pressure, characterized British special operations throughout the conflict. Not every experiment succeeded, not every creative solution proved practical, but the aggregate effort produced capabilities that contributed significantly to eventual victory. The innocent-looking cylinder strapped to an operative's forearm, concealing 3 ways to end a human life, may never have fulfilled its intended purpose, yet it survives as testimony to how far British engineers ventured when their nation's survival hung uncertain. A monument to creative desperation, a relic of dark ingenuity born from total war, proof that when death needed to arrive silently, invisibly, and by whatever means necessary, British innovation answered the call. Understanding this weapon requires understanding the men and women trained to use it. So operatives underwent psychological transformation that most soldiers never experienced. Regular infantry trained to kill at distance, to fire rifles at figures across battlefields, to drop artillery on coordinates miles away. Clandestine agents learned something far more intimate. They practiced ending lives close enough to smell their victims' breath. Training facilities scattered across the British countryside taught techniques that would disturb most civilians. Instructors demonstrated exactly how long a strangled man remained conscious. They showed precisely where blade penetration produced immediate collapse versus prolonged struggle. They drilled agents until killing motions became reflexive, performed without conscious thought in the darkness of occupied territory. The psychological burden of this training cannot be overstated. These weren't professional soldiers hardened through military culture. Many were civilians, recruited for language skills or pre-war connections to occupied countries. School teachers, businessmen, housewives, they learnt to kill silently because mission success demanded it. Carrying that knowledge alongside ordinary memories of peacetime existence. Imagine strapping an assassination device to your forearm before parachuting into Nazi-occupied France. You've memorized radio codes and dead drop locations. You know resistance contacts by code names only. And beneath your jacket sleeve sits an instrument designed for one purpose. If discovery threatens, if a sentry stands between your team and the target, you possess the means to solve that problem permanently and silently. The combination assassination tool belonged to a broader category of experimental weapons that British ingenuity produced and practicality rejected. SOE's research stations generated dozens of concepts that never achieved widespread deployment. Explosive coal, designed to detonate when shoveled into locomotive fireboxes, worked brilliantly in specific sabotage operations. Dead rats stuffed with plastic explosive and scattered near enemy boiler rooms exploited predictable German responses. When soldiers discovered rat carcasses, they typically tossed them into furnaces for disposal, triggering devastating blasts. These succeeded precisely because they matched specific operational requirements. Other concepts proved too specialized or impractical for general use. Poison pens that injected lethal compounds through apparent writing instruments, cigarette lighters concealing single-shot pistols, umbrella tips modified to deliver fatal punctures. Each addressed narrow tactical scenarios while creating complications that limited broader adoption. The combination weapon fit this pattern. Its designers identified a genuine operational problem. Agents needed multiple silent killing options without carrying multiple separate tools. Their solution demonstrated impressive engineering creativity, but the gap between theoretical elegance and field practicality proved unbridgeable. Today, this weapon occupies a peculiar position in historical consciousness. Too rare to achieve the iconic recognition of famous fighting knives, too specialized to represent broader wartime manufacturing, too unsuccessful to claim operational significance, yet too ingenious to ignore entirely. Collectors pursue surviving examples with intensity reserved for genuinely scarce artifacts. Each authenticated specimen represents approximately 4% of total production. Auction appearances generate significant attention from military historians and weapons specialists. Prices reflect both rarity and the compelling narrative attached to these objects. Museums displaying SOE equipment typically include combination weapons in their presentations. Curators recognize that these items communicate something essential about clandestine warfare that more successful tools cannot. The famous fighting knife represents proven lethality. Suppressed pistols demonstrate engineering achievement. But the 3-in-1 assassination device represents something different. It shows how desperately Britain searched for every possible advantage during its darkest hours. Modern special operations forces employ equipment that would astound wartime agents. Night vision devices render darkness irrelevant. Suppressed weapons achieve near-total acoustic signature elimination. Communications technology enables real-time coordination across continents. Yet the fundamental challenge that inspired this weapon persists. Operators still occasionally need to eliminate threats silently at close range without alerting nearby enemies. Contemporary solutions differ radically from the wartime approach. Training emphasizes scenarios where lethal force represents one option among many. Equipment provides choices unavailable to SOE agents, but somewhere in the lineage of modern covert capability, this peculiar cylinder occupies an ancestral position, not as direct predecessor but as evidence of the creative pressure that necessity applies to military engineering. The weapon that combined 3 killing methods into 7 inches of dark metal never achieved its intended purpose. It never silenced a German sentry. It never cleared the path for saboteurs approaching their target. It never fulfilled the grim promise its designers embedded in steel and wire and lead. Yet it endures. in museum cases, in collector vaults, in historical accounts of Britain's shadow war, a testament to innovation under pressure, a reminder that not every brilliant concept translates to practical success, and a permanent record of how far desperate nations venture when survival demands solutions that peacetime minds would never contemplate. Somewhere tonight, one of those surviving cylinders rests in temperature-controlled storage, its blade retracted, its wire coiled, its weighted ball motionless, waiting, as it has waited for 80 years, for a deployment that will never come.